Arizona hides something beyond the Grand Canyon. Beneath the red rock postcard, older than memory and still forming. A desert enigma where time becomes visible, where ancient cliff dwellings cling to limestone walls, with engineering that predates European settlement by 800 years, where canyons carved by prehistoric forces continue to reshape the earth. This is a land sculpted by extremes. Scorching sun and sudden monsoons. Rivers that vanished and left stone monuments in their wake. From the Sinagua ruins at Montezuma Castle to the volcanic peaks near Flagstaff. From the copper mines of Bisbee to the sandstone corridors of Antelope Canyon. Arizona holds more than a single lifetime could witness. The Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon over 6 million years. The Sonoran Desert grows saguaro cacti that live for 2 centuries. Spider Rock rises 800 feet from the floor of Canyon de Chelly, a formation sacred to the Navajo for generations beyond counting. This is a territory that existed long before human footprints marked its sand and will endure long after. What follows is a journey into the Arizona few truly understand, where geology, history, and myth converge across a landscape that reveals itself slowly to those willing to look beyond what they expect to find. Those ancient cliff dwellings mentioned in Whispers now reveal themselves in the Verde Valley south of Flagstaff. Montezuma Castle rises from a limestone alcove like a vision from another age. Despite its name, this place has no connection to the Aztec emperor. Early American settlers simply assumed something this remarkable must belong to a great civilization they recognized. The Sinagua people carved their existence into these cliffs between 1100 and 1400 AD. They chose this spot with careful intention, positioning their homes high above the floodplain of Beaver Creek. The alcove provided natural shelter from rain and snow. Summer heat reflected away from the recessed walls, creating a dwelling place suited to desert extremes. The 5-story structure contains roughly 20 rooms, built from limestone blocks and creek mud mortar. Each level steps back into the cliff face, following the natural contours of the alcove. Wooden beams, harvested from nearby sycamores, still support portions of the original framework. The Sinagua climbed retractable ladders to reach their homes, pulling them up at night for protection. Standing below, looking up at doorways that once held families, the scale of their achievement becomes clear. They built something meant to last, and it has outlived their presence by 6 centuries. From the limestone alcoves of Montezuma Castle, the land opens into Sedona, where red rock formations rise from the high desert floor like ancient monuments frozen mid-emergence. This small city sits at an elevation of 4,400 feet. Cradled within a landscape that glows crimson at sunrise and burns orange as daylight fades. The rocks here, formed from iron-rich sandstone deposits, laid down nearly 300 million years ago. Sedona draws seekers of silence, artists chasing light, and travelers who sense something in these formations that photographs cannot capture. Cathedral Rock stands as the most recognized silhouette in the region. Its twin spires rising over 1,500 feet above the valley floor. The formation earned its name from settlers who saw Gothic architecture in its natural towers and buttresses. Hikers who climb its steep slopes find themselves gripping sandstone worn smooth by countless hands before them. At the base, Oak Creek winds through cottonwood groves, offering a gentler communion with the same geological forces that built the monument above. Red Rock State Park spreads across 286 acres along the banks of Oak Creek, preserving a corridor where desert meets riparian woodland. 5 miles of trails wind through the park, passing through landscapes where juniper and cypress grow within sight of the towering red formations. The visitor center sits against a backdrop that seems almost staged in its perfection. Wildlife moves through this protected space with an ease rarely found elsewhere in the region. Bell Rock rises near the village of Oak Creek, its shape unmistakably resembling the bell that gave it a name. The formation climbs nearly 500 feet from the surrounding terrain, accessible enough that visitors of varied abilities can approach its base. Some come believing the site holds spiritual energy concentrated at specific points on the earth. Others arrive simply to witness what millions of years of wind and water carved from solid stone. A reminder that patience shapes even the hardest surfaces. Surrounding Sedona's crimson towers, a forest defies desert expectations. Coconino National Forest stretches across nearly 2 million acres of northern Arizona, where ponderosa pines grow thick and streams run cold through volcanic soil. This is high country, reaching elevations above 12,000 feet. The landscape shifts from red rock canyons to alpine meadows within a single afternoon's drive. Oak Creek Canyon cuts through the heart of this forest like a wound in the earth. Sheer walls of layered sandstone and limestone rise 500 feet on either side, painted in bands of crimson, orange, and cream. A creek runs along the canyon floor, fed by springs that emerge from the rock itself. The road that descends through this corridor drops 2,000 feet in 12 miles, revealing new formations with every switchback. Hidden among the red cliffs west of Sedona, Pulaski ruins preserve what the Sinagua people left behind 800 years ago. Cliff dwellings tuck into natural alcoves in the rock, their walls still standing against the elements. Pictographs and petroglyphs mark the stone nearby, symbols whose meanings remain debated by scholars. The people who built here vanished around the year 1300, leaving only architecture and art to speak for them. Courthouse Butte rises from the desert floor southeast of Sedona, and a solitary sandstone monument shaped by millions of years of erosion. Its flat summit and steep sides suggest the civic building it was named for, though no human hands carved these walls. Trails circle its base through high desert scrub, offering views that change with the movement of the sun. Morning light turns the rock gold. Evening shadows deepen every crevice to purple. The volcanic peaks visible from Coconino's high ridges now draw us closer to a mountain town that defies the desert below. Flagstaff sits at nearly 7,000 feet, where ponderosa pines replace saguaros and snow falls heavy through winter months. This is Arizona's high country, a place where 4 distinct seasons mark the passage of time. The town grew around the railroad in the 1880s, and something of that frontier spirit still lingers in its streets. The San Francisco peaks rise north of town, the remnants of an ancient volcano that once stood higher than any mountain in the modern Rockies. Humphreys Peak reaches 12,633 feet, the highest point in Arizona. The Navajo call this sacred mountain Duka-Usweed, the place where abalone shells mark the western boundary of their homeland. Snow clings to these slopes well into summer, feeding streams that vanish into the desert far below. Aspens turn gold across the flanks each autumn, painting the mountainside in colors that seem borrowed from another region entirely. Downtown Flagstaff holds its own quiet mysteries, none more storied than the Hotel Monte Vista. Built in 1927, this red brick landmark has hosted travelers for nearly a century. The guest book reads like old Hollywood, with names from John Wayne to Humphrey Bogart marking their stays. Locals speak of unexplained footsteps in empty hallways and rocking chairs that move on their own. Whether truth or legend, the hotel stands as a monument to the era when Route 66 brought America through this mountain town, one traveler at a time. North of Flagstaff, where that ancient river meets the sky, Grand Canyon National Park awaits. The Colorado carved this chasm, grain by grain, over millions of years. Nearly 2 billion years of Earth's history lie exposed in these layered walls. Each colored band tells a chapter that predates human memory by eons. The South Rim draws most who come to witness this void in the earth. Viewpoints line the edge for miles, each offering a different angle on the same impossible depth. Mather Point greets visitors at dawn, with light that paints the stone in shades of amber and rose. The rim trail wanders past juniper and pinyon pine. The canyon always present, nor always pulling the eye downward into silence. Across the chasm stands the North Rim, 1,000 feet higher and far less traveled. Dense forests of spruce and fir grow where the South Rim hosts desert scrub. Snow closes this entrance for half the year, leaving summer visitors in relative solitude. The air runs cooler here, the light softer, the crowds thinner by a measure of 10 to 1. From Bright Angel Point, the view reaches across the same abyss, yet feels like another world entirely. Beyond the Grand Canyon's northern rim, the Earth reveals its most guarded secrets where the Vermilion Cliffs rise from the desert floor. This remote wilderness stretches across nearly 300,000 acres of painted stone and ancient silence. Few places on Earth display geological time with such striking clarity. Here, the land itself becomes a living archive of planetary memory. Hidden within the Coyote Buttes region lies the Wave, a formation that defies simple description. Swirling bands of sandstone flow across the landscape like frozen liquid. Iron oxides and minerals painted these layers across 190 million years of deposition. Only 20 visitors per day receive permits to witness this place. A lottery system protecting what erosion spent eons creating. The journey to reach the Wave demands 6 miles of hiking across unmarked terrain. No trails exist here, only coordinates and cairns guiding those fortunate enough to hold a permit. Standing within its curved walls, the striations tell stories of ancient dunes and shifting winds. Each ripple in the stone marks a moment when this desert was a vast sand sea, long before any human walked the earth. The same Colorado River that carved those painted cliffs once ran wild through Black Canyon, where human ambition met geological force. The Hoover Dam rises 726 feet from bedrock to crest. A concrete arc wedged between Arizona and Nevada. Built during the Great Depression, this structure required 5 million barrels of concrete and the labor of 21,000 workers over 5 years. The dam stands as one of the largest ever constructed, holding back waters that once flooded valleys and left desert communities at the mercy of seasonal chaos. Behind the dam stretches Lake Mead, a reservoir that reshaped the regional landscape when waters first began pooling in 1935. At full capacity, the lake holds enough water to cover the entire state of Connecticut 10 feet deep. Its shoreline extends for over 750 miles, winding through canyons and desert washes that were once dry ground. Boaters, swimmers, and anglers now drift above submerged ghost towns and forgotten ranches claimed by the rising waters decades ago. The Colorado River control system extends far beyond what visitors see at the dam site. This network of reservoirs, canals, and aqueducts delivers water to nearly 40 million people across 7 states and Mexico. Power generated here travels through transmission lines to Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. The river that carved the Grand Canyon now answers to intake towers and spillway gates. Its ancient force measured in acre-feet and megawatts, rather than the floods that once defined seasons in the desert Southwest. Beyond the dam's concrete arc, the red rock monuments give way to something even more ancient as we cross into Navajo Nation territory. Monument Valley rises from the desert floor like a forgotten city of stone giants. This landscape straddles the Arizona-Utah border, though boundaries mean little here. The Navajo call it Sibinziskai, the Valley of the Rocks. The West and East Mitten Buttes stand as the valley's most recognized sentinels. Their shapes earned the name from early settlers who saw giant hands reaching toward the sky. Each butte rises nearly 300 feet above the valley floor. Wind and water carved these forms over millions of years, and stripping away softer rock to reveal the iron-rich sandstone beneath. The deep red color comes from iron oxide, rust painted across stone by time itself. Dawn and dusk transform the mittens into something almost alive. Morning light strikes the eastern faces first, turning cold purple shadows into burning orange. The formations seem to shift and breathe as the sun tracks across the sky. Photographers wait for hours to capture moments when shadow and light divide the buttes in half. This patience mirrors the Navajo relationship with the land, measured in seasons rather than seconds. The Mittens have witnessed more than geological time. Navajo families have lived in this valley for generations, their hogans dotting the desert floor. Hollywood discovered this landscape in the 1930s, filming westerns that burned these silhouettes into global memory. Yet the valley belongs to no camera, no visitor. It remains Navajo land, sacred ground, where stone and sky hold conversations older than human speech. Leaving the Mittens behind on the horizon, we follow the Colorado to where it once carved freely through sandstone corridors, and where a different kind of monument now rises from the Arizona landscape. Lake Powell stretches across the border into Utah, a vast reservoir born from human ambition and geological fortune. Its waters fill ancient canyons that took millions of years to form. Here, engineering and wilderness exist in uneasy partnership. Glen Canyon Dam stands as the structure that made this transformation possible. Rising 710 feet above the riverbed, it ranks among the tallest concrete arch dams in the United States. Construction began in 1956 and took nearly a decade to complete. The dam holds back 17 million acre-feet of water, creating a shoreline that twists for nearly 2,000 miles through red rock terrain. The waters behind the dam submerged countless side canyons, natural bridges, and ancient petroglyphs that few had ever documented. What emerged was something entirely new. Houseboats now drift where desert bighorn sheep once walked canyon floors. Slot canyons that once ended in dry washes now open into blue water passages. The dam itself generates power for communities across the Southwest, its turbines humming deep within the concrete walls, while the reservoir above reflects sandstone cliffs unchanged since long before any dam was imagined. At the edge of Lake Powell's vast waters lies the small town of Page, a gateway to formations that defy simple description. Perched near the Utah border, this community of fewer than 8,000 residents sits atop some of the most photographed geology on Earth. The Colorado River bends through ancient rock just minutes from town. What draws visitors here cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Horseshoe Bend presents itself without warning. A short walk from a dusty parking area leads to a cliff edge where the Colorado River has carved a near-perfect arc through red sandstone. The drop measures over 1,000 feet to the green waters below. No railings existed here for decades, not just raw desert and vertigo. The river spent millions of years cutting this path, grain by grain, flood by flood. Standing at the overlook, the scale becomes difficult to process. The opposite canyon wall rises the height of a 70-story building. Eagles circle in the thermal currents far below the viewing point. Antelope Canyon exists as light made solid. Navajo guides lead visitors through narrow passages where sandstone waves frozen mid-motion. The upper canyon catches midday sun in summer, sending beams through slots overhead onto the rippled walls below. These formations began as sand dunes 200 million years ago. Flash floods continue sculpting the passages today, each monsoon season carving new curves into the soft Navajo sandstone. The lower canyon descends through ladders and tight squeezes into chambers that glow orange and purple, depending on the hour. Photography cannot capture the silence inside, the coolness of stone shaped by water that visits only during storms. East of Antelope Canyon's sculpted passages, another sacred formation awaits where geology and myth converge. Canyon de Chelly, a place where the Navajo have lived continuously for nearly 5,000 years. This canyon system cuts through the Defiance Plateau in northeastern Arizona, its red sandstone walls rising as high as 1,000 feet. Unlike other protected lands, families still farm the canyon floor today. Sheep graze beneath ancient petroglyphs while orchards bloom in spring, making this one of the longest inhabited landscapes in North America. Spider Rock commands attention at the junction of Canyon de Chelly and Monument Canyon. This sandstone spire rises 800 feet from the canyon floor, and its twin towers standing in silent witness to passing centuries. Navajo tradition holds that Spider Woman lives atop this formation, the deity who taught the people to weave. Parents once told children that the white streaks near the summit were the bleached bones of misbehaving youngsters, carried there by Spider Woman herself. White House Ruin clings to a sandstone alcove roughly 600 feet above the canyon floor. Ancestral Puebloans constructed these dwellings around 800 years ago, building rooms of stone and mud against the cliff face. The structure takes its name from a long wall once covered in white plaster, still visible against the darker rock. A trail descends from the canyon rim. As crossing the wash below before climbing to the ruin, the only path visitors may walk without a Navajo guide. From Canyon to Chelly's living traditions, we traveled to where Arizona reveals its most ancient secrets, in the remote reaches of Petrified Forest National Park. This protected wilderness stretches across more than 200,000 acres of high desert plateau. Here, time itself seems frozen in stone. The land holds remnants of a world that existed over 200 million years ago, when this region lay near the equator and dinosaurs walked among towering conifers. The Painted Desert sweeps across the northern section of the park in bands of color that shift with every passing hour. Red, orange, pink, and purple sediments layer the Badlands in stripes that took millions of years to form. These hues come from iron and manganese minerals deposited when an ancient river system flowed through this land. At dawn and dusk, the colors intensify, turning the barren hills into something that resembles a canvas still wet with paint. Scattered across the desert floor lie the fallen giants of a prehistoric forest. Trees turned to solid stone through a process that replaced wood fiber with silica crystal by crystal. Some logs stretch over 100 feet in length, their bark patterns still visible after 225 million years. The silence here carries weight, broken only by wind, moving across exposed ridges. Visitors walk among these petrified remains and stand where an entirely different world once flourished beneath a younger sun. Leaving the petrified logs behind, we head west toward Phoenix, where the desert floor gives way to jagged volcanic ridges and the Superstition Mountains rise like ancient sentinels guarding secrets older than memory. These peaks hold a reputation that precedes them. Apache legends speak of thunder gods dwelling within these stone walls. Spanish conquistadors searched these canyons for cities of gold. The mountains remain indifferent to those who came seeking and those who never returned. The Lost Dutchman's mine has drawn fortune seekers into these peaks for over 150 years. A German immigrant named Jacob Waltz allegedly discovered a gold deposit of staggering wealth somewhere in these canyons during the 1870s. He died in 1891 without revealing its location. Since then, countless prospectors have entered the superstitions searching for his hidden claim. Some found only the desert. Others were never seen again. The mine may exist. It may not. The mountains keep their silence either way. Wave Cave sits carved into a cliff face along the Peralta Trail. Its curved sandstone walls, shaped by wind and time, into a natural amphitheater. The formation creates an opening that frames the desert below, like a window into another world. Hikers reach this shelter after climbing through boulder fields and saguaro forests. From inside, the valley spreads out in layers of ochre and green. The silence broken only by wind moving through stone. Weaver's Needle punctures the skyline at 4,500 feet. A volcanic spire visible from miles across the basin. This landmark has guided travelers through the superstitions for centuries. Many believe the Lost Dutchman's mine lies somewhere in its shadow. The Needle stands alone, a monument of cooled magma that refused to erode when softer rock crumbled around it. Whether it guards treasure or merely desert, the formation commands attention from anyone who walks these trails. South of the Superstition's shadowed canyons, the Sonoran Desert reveals its true character around Tucson. This sun-drenched valley sits cradled between mountain ranges that rise like sentinels from the desert floor. Heat shimmers above the land during summer months. Yet life persists here in forms found nowhere else on Earth. Tucson has grown alongside the desert rather than against it. A city shaped by the rhythms of an ancient landscape. Saguaro National Park flanks the city on both its eastern and western edges, protecting a forest unlike any other. The saguaro cactus stands as the defining symbol of the American Southwest, with arms reaching skyward like figures frozen in contemplation. These giants grow slowly, taking 75 years before producing their first arm. Some specimens here have witnessed 200 summers. Their ribbed trunks scarred by time, yet still producing white blossoms each spring. West of Tucson, the Quinlan Mountains hold Kitt Peak Observatory at their summit, nearly 7,000 feet above the desert. The dry air and distance from city lights create conditions astronomers prize above almost anywhere else in North America. 19 telescopes dot this mountaintop, their white domes turning toward the cosmos each night. The Tohono O'odham Nation has permitted this presence on their sacred land for over 6 decades, allowing humanity to peer deeper into space from this ancient ground. East of Tucson, deep in the southeastern corner of the state, where the Chiricahua Mountains rise from the desert floor, the land reveals one of Arizona's most extraordinary geological secrets. Chiricahua National Monument protects a forest unlike any other. Here, thousands of stone spires stand in silent congregation across the mountainside. The Apache called this place the land of standing up rocks, and the name still fits. These formations owe their existence to the Turkey Creek caldera, a massive volcanic depression that collapsed roughly 27 million years ago. The eruption released nearly 500 cubic miles of ash and debris across the landscape. As this material settled and cooled, near it fused into a rock called rhyolite tuff. Softer than granite, but harder than sandstone, it became the raw material for what would come next. Water and wind worked slowly over the millennia, carving the welded tuff into pillars, balanced rocks, and narrow slot passages. Some columns rise 80 feet from the canyon floor. Others lean at angles that seem to defy physics. The volcanic origin remains visible in the rock itself, where bands of color mark different layers of ancient ash. Walking among these spires today means walking through the aftermath of a catastrophe that shaped this corner of Arizona long before any human eye witnessed it. Not far from Chiricahua's stone spires, another kind of monument stands, one built by human hands and gunfire, where myth emerged from Arizona's harsh terrain. Tombstone rises from the high desert plains of Cochise County, a place where silver strikes and frontier justice wrote chapters still repeated today. Founded in 1879, this mining camp grew into one of the wealthiest towns between St. Louis and San Francisco. The name itself came from a warning that the founder would find only his tombstone in this Apache territory. The OK Corral stands preserved on Allen Street. 30 seconds of gunfire, frozen in collective memory. On October 26, 1881, the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday faced the Clanton and McClory gang in a confrontation that lasted less than a minute. 30 shots fired across a narrow lot no wider than a bowling lane. Three men died where they stood. The event itself lasted moments, but its shadow stretches across more than a century of American storytelling. Boot Hill Graveyard sits at the edge of town, its wooden markers weathered by desert sun and monsoon rains. More than 250 souls rest beneath this rocky soil, many buried with boots still on their feet. Headstones carry epitaphs, both solemn and darkly humorous, recording the violent ends common to silver boom towns. Names like Billy Clanton and Tom McClory appear here, casualties of that October gunfight. The graveyard closed in 1884 when a new cemetery opened, leaving Boot Hill as a monument to those brief, brutal years. From Tombstone's dusty streets, the copper mines mentioned in our opening words call us further south, to a town carved into the Mule Mountains near the Mexican border. Bisbee rises from canyon walls in terraced layers of Victorian architecture and mining history. Once called the Queen of the Copper Camps, this mile-high city produced 8 billion pounds of copper over its working lifetime. The wealth pulled from these hills built San Francisco banks and powered the electrical age across America. The Queen Mine takes visitors 900 feet beneath the surface into tunnels where miners once worked by candlelight. Temperatures drop as the elevator descends past rock formations dating back 170 million years. Original equipment still lines the passages, pickaxes and ore carts frozen in time since operations ceased in 1975. Former miners often lead these underground tours, their voices echoing off walls that yielded copper, gold, silver, and turquoise. Above ground, the Lavender Pit Mine spreads across the landscape in terraced bands of orange, purple, and rust. This open pit operation carved nearly 1 billion tons of earth from the mountainside between 1951 and 1974. Named not for its colors, but for Harrison Lavender, the general manager who designed it, the pit stretches 3/4 of a mile wide and 900 feet deep. Viewing platforms along the rim reveal the sheer scale of human industry pressed against ancient geology. A wound in the earth that time has slowly begun to soften with desert brush and shifting light. Ascending from Bisbee's terraced canyons, we turn northwest toward another place where human ambition left its mark on the Arizona hills. Jerome clings to the side of Cleopatra Hill, a town built on copper dreams and stubborn determination. Once home to 15,000 souls chasing fortune beneath the earth, it now holds fewer than 500. The streets tilt at angles that seem to defy reason, buildings sliding slowly downhill over decades. The town earned its reputation as the wickedest place in the West during its mining heyday. Saloons outnumbered churches by a wide margin. Fortunes rose and fell with the price of copper. And the mountain gave up over $1 billion in ore before the mines went silent. What remains is a vertical maze of brick and timber, clinging to slopes where dynamite blasts once shook foundations loose from their moorings. Outside the town proper sits the Gold King Mine, where rusted machinery stands frozen in the moment work stopped. Old trucks and engines rest among the weeds, their metal bodies slowly returning to the earth. A stamp mill, head frames, and mining equipment create an open-air museum of industrial ambition. This is not a polished exhibit, but an honest remnant, where visitors walk among the tools that pulled wealth from rock and left scars on the mountainside that nature has yet to heal. North of Jerome's tilting streets, tucked into the pine-covered highlands of central Arizona, lies a town that time shaped differently. Prescott sits at an elevation of over 5,000 feet, where cool mountain air replaces the scorching heat below. This was Arizona's first territorial capital, established in 1864, when the region still belonged to wilderness. Victorian homes line quiet streets beneath towering ponderosa pines, a scene that feels borrowed from another century entirely. Courthouse Plaza anchors the town with steadfast presence. The Yavapai County Courthouse rises at its center, surrounded by elm trees that have witnessed more than 100 years of gatherings. Locals spread blankets on the grass during summer concerts. Benches fill with visitors who come simply to sit and watch the afternoon pass. This square has served as the community's living room since the 1860s, a tradition that continues without interruption. Whiskey Row stands along the western edge of the plaza, a stretch of saloons and storefronts that once served miners, cowboys, and drifters seeking fortune in the nearby hills. Fire swept through in 1899, but the bars reopened within weeks. The same wooden floors that creaked under boots more than a century ago still groan today. History here is not preserved behind glass, but lived in daily. North of town, the granite dells rise from the earth like scattered monuments left by ancient hands. Rounded boulders of billion-year-old granite tumble across the landscape in formations that seem impossible. Watson Lake fills the spaces between, its still waters reflecting stone and sky in equal measure. Kayakers glide through narrow passages, while hikers trace paths worn by countless feet before them. This terrain predates human memory, yet it welcomes all who come seeking quiet wonder. From Prescott's Victorian quiet, we descend into the valley where another Arizona waits and the Sonoran Desert meets modern life. Scottsdale spreads across the valley floor, with the McDowell Mountains rising to the east. This city carries a distinct identity shaped by both frontier heritage and contemporary vision. Where saguaros stand guard at the edges of manicured streets, the desert remains present in every view. Old Town Scottsdale preserves the spirit of the original settlement, founded in 1888. Wooden boardwalks line certain streets, passing storefronts that recall the days when this was farmland and cattle country. Western architecture blends with adobe structures under the relentless Arizona sun. Galleries and trading posts occupy buildings that have witnessed over a century of transformation. From agricultural outpost to desert destination. The Arts District pulses with creative energy, drawn from generations of artists who found inspiration in the desert light. Studios and galleries cluster along streets where southwestern art traditions meet contemporary expression. Bronze sculptures catch morning sun outside adobe walls. This neighborhood has attracted painters, sculptors, and craftspeople since the 1960s, building a reputation that extends far beyond state borders. The McDowell Mountains define Scottsdale's eastern horizon, with peaks reaching nearly 3,000 feet above the valley. Ancient granite formations hold petroglyphs left by peoples who walked these trails centuries before any modern city existed. Saguaro cacti dot the slopes alongside palo verde and ironwood trees. At dawn and dusk, the mountains shift through shades of purple and gold, a daily reminder that the desert keeps its own timeless rhythms. Just west of Scottsdale's galleries and mountain trails, the Valley of the Sun expands into Arizona's largest city, spreading across the Sonoran desert floor. Phoenix rises from a landscape that seems inhospitable at first glance, yet harbors life in unexpected forms. Saguaro cacti stand sentinel on surrounding hillsides, their arms reaching skyward like ancient watchers. This desert metropolis exists where wilderness and urban sprawl meet at sharp edges. Camelback Mountain defines the Phoenix skyline with its distinctive humped profile. The formation earned its name from settlers who saw a resting camel in its red sandstone ridges. Two trails climb its slopes, Echo Canyon and Cholla, to both demanding respect from those who attempt the ascent. From the 2,600-foot summit, the city unfolds below in geometric patterns against the raw desert beyond. South Mountain Park stretches across more than 16,000 acres at the city's southern boundary. This preserve ranks among the largest municipal parks in the nation, a wilderness corridor within sight of downtown towers. Over 50 miles of trails wind through desert terrain where petroglyphs mark stones, left by hands that walked these paths centuries ago. The Dobbins Lookout offers views that stretch to distant mountain ranges on clear days. Mystery Castle sits at South Mountain's base. Nigh a structure born from one father's unusual promise. Boyce Luther Gully built this 18-room dwelling from found materials during the 1930s and 40s. Adobe, stone, automobile parts, and salvaged objects form its walls and archways. He constructed it for the daughter he left behind in Seattle. A real-life castle to replace the sand ones waves had always washed away. From Phoenix's urban edges back to the wilderness beyond, the desert holds what it has always held: stone and silence and time moving at a pace no traveler can match. Arizona revealed itself in layers across this journey. Each canyon and ruin and mountain peak adding another chapter to a story still being written by wind and water. From the cliff dwellings at Montezuma Castle to the painted walls of Antelope Canyon, from the ghostly streets of Jerome to the sacred spire of Spider Rock. This land asks only that visitors look closely and stay a little longer than expected. Click on the video that's appearing now to continue your journey of the wonders of the world.